Good morning. Today is Tuesday, October 21st. This is Wake Up with KERA News, and I'm Andrew Garcia. After a relatively warm afternoon yesterday, today will be much cooler. Highs will be in the low 80s. Though an elevated fire threat remains across North Texas due to dry and breezy conditions. Early voting is officially underway for next month's general election. We'll hear more about the constitutional amendments that are up for vote. That's after the news. The North Texas Food Bank expects a surge in demand in the coming weeks due to the government shutdown. KERA's Emmanuel Rivas reports.
The North Texas Food Bank expects a spike in need if the shutdown continues into November, as federal workers miss paychecks and SNAP programs or food stamps are only funded through the end of this month. Clarissa Clark with the food bank says they're in constant communication with more than 500 partners to prepare for an increase in demand.
We've had sort of almost weekly or daily calls with the Feeding America organization. So we're trying to really just wade through what is true and what is not, and just focusing on helping the neighbors.
The food bank says it's also closely communicating with elected officials to coordinate in case of a longer shutdown. For KERA News, I'm Emmanuel Rivas.
Experts say Texas is still experiencing a teacher certification crisis. KERA's Bill Ziebel reports students could pay the price even after new state legislative efforts begin.
The latest numbers show more than half of the state's classroom teachers lack certification. They not only leave the field in higher numbers than certified instructors, they hurt students, says Bridget Worley with the education nonprofit Commit Partnership.
Students who are taught by uncertified teachers with no prior classroom experience lose 3 to 4 months of learning in reading and math.
Worley says the state's new education funding bill puts $187 million into a prep program so more qualified candidates can gain teacher certification. But the program will take time. The law requires all K-12 core instructors must be certified by 2030. For KERA News, I'm Bill Ziebel in Dallas.
Early voting is officially underway for next month's general election. There will be a variety of local ballot measures on the ticket, depending on where you live, but the only statewide contests this year are 17 proposed amendments to the Texas Constitution. Houston Public Media's Andrew Schneider looks at several of the most wide-ranging measures.
More than half the constitutional amendments on the ballot this fall deal with taxation. Arguably, the most significant measures would raise homestead exemptions. They determine how much of a home's property value can be taxed to pay for public schools. Proposition 13 would lift the homestead exemption for all Texas homeowners from $100,000 to $140,000. Republican State Senator Paul Bettencourt of Houston is its author.
That $140,000 exemption, it means it's whatever your primary, homestead is, and it doesn't matter if it's year 1 or year 50, that's going to be there. So that's a substantial lifetime benefit.
Bettencourt is also the author of Proposition 11, which would provide an additional $50,000 in property tax relief for homeowners who are over 65 or disabled.
They're generally on fixed income, and they need the most help staying in their home.
Taken together with amendments to reduce property taxes passed in earlier elections, maintaining these reductions will cost the state more than $50 billion. John Diamond heads the Center for Tax and Budget Policy at Rice University's Baker Institute.
A lot of those have been funded out of surplus money, and surplus money is one-time revenue. It's not recurring revenue. So when the surplus ends, you have to find another way to finance these reductions.
If the amendments are approved, the state would make up the difference for the revenue school districts lose from property taxes through a process called compression. But unlike the homestead exemptions, the compressions would not be written into the Constitution.
There's a big difference between the homestead exemptions, which are constitutionally passed and so guaranteed forever, but the compressions can be taken away just like that. Those are not protected.
And that could lead to deep cuts in public education funding in lean budget years, much as Texas saw 20 years ago. Some of the other tax measures are highly targeted. Proposition 7 would provide a full or partial homestead exemption to the surviving spouse of a veteran who died from a disease or medical condition related to their service. Then there's Proposition 10, which provides a temporary property tax exemption for people whose homes are destroyed by fire. That's another of Betancourt's measures.
We'll give them the same coverage that we do for tornadoes and hurricanes. Because if your home's burned down, you shouldn't have to pay on the whole full value.
Then there are a series of measures that would ban the state from collecting certain kinds of taxes altogether. Proposition 2 bans capital gains taxes. Proposition 6 bans taxes on securities transactions. That's ahead of Texas establishing its own stock exchange. And Proposition 8 would ban inheritance taxes. Texas doesn't collect any of these at present, but Diamond says ruling them out limits the state's options when revenues from other sources fall.
Sales taxes, I could definitely see those flattening out as the consumer's resilience finally fades. And then federal transfers almost certainly are going to fall and could fall significantly. That is a huge chunk of the Texas budget.
But what about the ballot measures that don't relate to taxation? At least 3 have potentially widespread ramifications for the state. Take Proposition 3, which would amend the Constitution to allow judges to deny bail to people charged with certain felonies. Republican State Senator Joan Huffman of Houston has been trying to get this passed since 2019.
A judge would have to determine that either the person was going to be, a threat in some way to the safety of the community or to law enforcement, and or, a likelihood that the person would not return to court.
Huffman says the amendment would apply only to the most serious offenses: murder, aggravated robbery, aggravated sexual assault, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and continuous human trafficking. Prop 3 would affect a relatively small number of cases in the Texas justice system, according to Nick Hudson of the ACLU of Texas, but Hudson is still concerned this will worsen overcrowding in jails.
They have not been convicted. They are presumed innocent, waiting for trial behind bars at a cost to taxpayers of about $1.2 billion.
One ballot measure with a similar price tag is Proposition 4. This amendment would dedicate up to $1 billion a year from existing state sales tax revenue to the Texas Water Fund for the next 20 years. The money would be used to fix some of the state's most pressing water infrastructure needs. Sarah Roundtree Schlesinger is the CEO of the Texas Water Foundation.
Is it enough? No, it's not enough to meet everything. Is it a significant move towards funding water infrastructure in Texas? Yes. Significantly so.
Schlesinger says the total amount of money is less significant than the fact that the amendment provides for a dedicated and ongoing source of funds, allowing the state to better plan for long-term needs like combating droughts worsening in the face of climate change. Jeremy Mazer of the public policy think tank Texas 2036 says Houston and other major cities have a lot riding on the passage of Prop 4.
First, they need to expand and diversify their water supply portfolio for a dynamic, growing region. And second, there's also this issue of aging, deteriorating, leaking water systems within the Houston metropolitan area that really need to be resolved sometime soon.
Then there's Proposition 14, which would create a state institute for fighting dementia, similar to one Texas has already established to target cancer. The amendment would provide an initial $3 billion in state surplus revenue to a fund dedicated to finding medical breakthroughs, cures, and prevention.
This would be sort of the second largest funding for something like this for brain health outside of the NIH, the United States.
Ashley McPhail, Chief External Affairs Officer for the Texas Medical Center, says the investment of state tax dollars would more than pay for itself.
Currently, over 400,000 Texans are living with Alzheimer's, which cost families over $20 billion per year.
It could lure hundreds of researchers to the state and spark the creation of dozens of companies dedicated to fighting dementia, much as the state's Cancer Institute has done already. Early voting on the amendments runs through Halloween. Election Day is November 4th. I'm Andrew Schneider in Houston.
We've got a handy voter guide with more information at KERAnews.org. That's also where you can check out some of the issues that might be on your local ballot. The Dallas Stars are playing the Blue Jackets tonight at the American Airlines Center. The Stars are off to a mixed start. They came out strong, rattling off 3 wins in a row. That's before dropping their last 2. Celebrate life and remembrance on Sunday at the Fort Worth Botanic Gardens Dia De Muertos Festival. Enjoy an afternoon filled with mariachi music, dance performances, strolling Katrinas, and a marigold carpet that flows down the Rose Garden stairs. Guests are invited to bring mementos honoring their loved ones to add to the altar. To see details and more arts events, head to the Go See DFW calendar at keranews.org/calendar. Thanks so much for listening to Wake Up with KERA News. I'm your host, Andrew Garcia. For more news in your inbox, visit kera.org/wakeup. That's where you can subscribe to the Wake Up with KERA News newsletter. You'll get a more in-depth look into the news with plenty of good morning vibes. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at KERATX. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.